They say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but they never tell you what happens when that line leads you straight out of existence. I used to trust my GPS more than my own eyes. Why wouldn't I? It's a god in a glass box, a digital pulse that knows every vein of asphalt on this planet. But tonight, the god is hungry. It started at 11:42 p.m. I was driving back from the office, the kind of soul-sucking late shift that leaves your eyes burning and your brain feeling like static. The rain was coming down in sheets, thick, heavy needles that turned the world into a blurred mess of neon red brake lights and oily black pavement. Rerouting, the voice said. It wasn't the usual cheerful assistant. It sounded older, a bit more hollow. Heavy traffic detected on Main Street, taking optimal shortcut, turn right in 200 yards onto Blackwood Lane. I blinked. Main Street? At midnight on a Tuesday? There wasn't a soul out there, but I was tired. So tired I didn't question why the blue line on my dashboard suddenly veered away from the city lights and into the mouth of the valley. Continue straight for 3 miles, the GPS whispered. The streetlights began to flicker, then vanished altogether. The smooth hum of tires on asphalt transitioned into the crunch of gravel. I looked out the window, but the rain was too thick. All I could see was the reflection of my own pale, exhausted face in the glass, illuminated by the cold, spectral glow of the screen. I didn't realize it then, but Blackwood Lane wasn't on any map I'd ever seen, and the shortcut it was taking me on, it wasn't just moving me through space, it was moving me through something much, much older.
The gravel road didn't just get worse, it disappeared. One moment I was bouncing over potholes, the next my tires were sinking into soft, damp earth and decades-old leaf litter. In 500 yards you will reach your destination, the voice announced. I hit the brakes. My headlights cut through the dark, revealing trees so thick and gnarled they looked like frozen explosions of wood. There was no road, no path, just a wall of green and grey. Wait, I muttered, my voice sounding thin in the cabin. There's nothing here. GPS, cancel navigation. Nothing happened. I pressed the screen. It was cold, too cold. It felt like touching an ice cube. The map didn't close. Instead, the blue arrow continued to crawl forward, even though the car was stationary. You are approaching the residence, the GPS said. The voice was changing now. The digital artifacts were getting heavier, a low-frequency hum vibrating under the words. Arrival estimated at 12 a.m., April 29th, 1974.
My heart did a slow, painful roll in my chest. 1974. I looked at my phone. The signal bar was gone. Not just no service, but the icon itself had vanished, replaced by a strange, pulsing symbol that looked like a stylized eye. I tried to put the car in reverse, but the gear shift wouldn't budge. It felt like it was fused to the floor. Outside, the rain stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse than the storm. It was a heavy, pressurized silence that made my ears pop. Then the GPS screen did something that shouldn't be possible. It switched from a 2D map to a live 3D render. But it wasn't rendering the forest outside. It was rendering a house. A massive 3-story Victorian estate with wraparound porches and glowing yellow windows. You have arrived. The voice whispered. This time, it wasn't a computer. It was a woman's voice, breathy and desperate. I looked out the windshield. There was no house, only a clearing. And in the center of that clearing, half buried in the dirt, were the jagged, moss-covered stones of a foundation that had been torn down 50 years ago tonight.
I was trapped. The car was a cage, and the forest was a tomb. I grabbed a heavy flashlight from the glove box and smashed it against the side window. The glass didn't break. It rippled. Like a stone thrown into a pond, the window shimmered with a liquid reflection of the clearing outside. But the reflection wasn't showing the ruins. It was showing the house. The real house. I could see the curtains fluttering in the breeze. I could see a rocking chair on the porch, moving slowly back and forth. "Welcome home," the speakers hissed. The car's internal lights flickered and died. In the darkness, the GPS screen was the only source of light. It began to play a video, a grainy black and white feed of the very seat I was sitting in. But the car in the video was different. It was an old model, a 1970s sedan. And the person in the driver's seat, they had my face. I watched, paralyzed, as the me on the screen turned to the camera. Their eyes were leaking a thick black fluid. They pointed towards the ruins. I turned my head. The ruins were changing.
The car was being tilted at a 45-degree angle as the porch of the resurrected house formed beneath it. I scrambled toward the driver's side door, kicking at the glass with everything I had. Finally, it shattered, not into liquid ripples, but into thousands of shards of real, cold glass. I tumbled out onto the grass, or what used to be grass. It felt like walking on velvet soaked in blood. I didn't look back. I ran toward the tree line, but the forest was gone. In its place was an endless, shimmering wall of white noise. "You can't leave the coordinate," the voice echoed through the clearing. It didn't need the speakers anymore. It was coming from the air itself. I spun around. The house was complete. It stood there, towering and magnificent, a monument to a tragedy I didn't yet understand. Every window was lit with a warm, inviting glow, and there, in the center window of the second floor, I saw it. The GPS. My phone was floating in the middle of the room, projected to the size of a television screen. It was showing a map of the city, my neighborhood, my house, and on that map, a little blue dot was moving. The moonlight was hitting the jagged stones, but the shadows they cast weren't flat. They were rising. Bricks were manifesting out of the darkness, stitching themselves together in mid-air with the sound of grinding teeth. The house was rebuilding itself, fueled by the digital pulse of my GPS. "The foundation requires a witness," the woman's voice returned, louder now, coming from every speaker, even the ones that were broken. "The house remembers, the house hungry, and you are the final brick." The ground beneath the car began to shake. A massive rotted wooden beam burst through the floorboards of the passenger side, missing my legs by inches. It smelled of wet earth and ancient, forgotten rot. I realized then that the GPS hadn't just led me to a location.
It had synchronized my existence with a moment in time that was never supposed to end.
It was pulling into my driveway. It was turning off the engine. It was walking toward my front door. My blood turned to ice. If I was here, who was the GPS leading home? I looked back at the Victorian house. The front door creaked open. A woman stood there, wearing a dress from the 1970s. Her face was a blur of digital noise, but her hand reached out, beckoning me. "The loop is closing," she said, her voice now a perfect mimic of my own. "Thank you for the shortcut." As she spoke, the white noise wall began to close in, shrinking the world down to just the house and me. The car, my only link to the real world, was being crushed into a cube of scrap metal by the weight of the porch. I reached into my pocket, hoping, praying for a signal. My fingers brushed against something cold and hard. It wasn't my phone. I pulled it out. It was a brass key, old, rusted, with a tag tied to it that said, "Property of Blackwood Estate. Destroyed April 29th, 1974. Then, my actual phone, the one floating in the house, chimed. A notification. New destination found. The basement. The ground beneath me gave way.